Today, we're talking about the instability in the atmosphere, especially these symmetric instability and the conditional symmetric instability. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Before that, we talked about the thermal instability or the convective instability. Also, we talked about the SISC mechanism, the conditional instability of the second kind, and the inertial instability. All those things we have talked about already. So the last two instability, that is the inertial one and the symmetric instability, they are basically related to the flow pattern. In case of symmetric instability, basically uh, when you talk about the convective instability, the convective motions are straight vertical, as you know, but when it occurs over a very large scale area over the Earth's surface, which itself is rotating, then the convective motions are no longer vertical. Okay, because there is a effect of Earth's rotation on the vertical motion. So therefore, there is a balance between the effective gravity. In case of the pure convective motion, the vertical motion is actually balanced by the gravity and the buoyancy forces. Okay, when there is a pure convective motion, which is vertical, the vertical motion is basically balanced by the gravity and the buoyancy forces. Whereas when the motion is taking place over a very large scale area, hundreds of squares of kilometer, or sometimes even thousands of squares kilometer, as in the real atmosphere or the Earth's surface, then the Earth's Coriolis force also comes into action, and due to that, the motion is a resultant between the gravitational force and the angular momentum. Okay, and so the convective motions are not vertical but tilted in this case, and such kind of instability is called the symmetric instability. Okay, that we have discussed in detail yesterday. We also discussed yesterday that the symmetric instability or the conditional symmetric instability depends on the location of an air parcel with respect to the isolines of the momentum and the thermal energy, like equivalent potential temperature, right? Equivalent potential temperature theta E is a representative of the thermal energy, and similarly the momentum surfaces are representative of the Earth's angular momentum. So these two surfaces, the surfaces of equal angular momentum and the surface of equal potential, equivalent potential temperature, they don't coincide. Okay, well, when they coincide, then there is no instability, then it is a neutral instability. We had discussed yesterday about that. When the two surfaces coincide with each other, then it is a case of neutral instability, right? That we discussed yesterday. So the motion of the parcel depends upon its location with respect to the two surfaces. Okay, just like we have the conditional instability in case of convective motion, you know that it depends upon the lapse rate, right? That you know already. The lapse rate of the environment, the dry adiabatic lapse rate and the moist adiabatic lapse rate, right? So depending upon the lapse rate of the environment with respect to the lapse rate of the dry adiabate and moist adiabate, we have the conditional instability in the atmosphere, right? You remember that, you have studied that in your last semester. Okay, conditional instability. We studied in the last semester conditional instability. What is the conditional instability? Gamma S, that is the saturation adiabatic lapse rate. Okay, less than gamma, the environmental lapse rate, which is less than the dry adiabatic lapse rate. Okay, so less than the dry adiabatic lapse rate. So this is the conditional instability because of the convective motion alone. Okay, and we have the conditional symmetric instability. Okay, and this depends, instead of gamma S and gamma D, we have the angular momentum of the Earth surface, and of course, one of the factor is the thermal instability. Let us say gamma S. Okay, greater than, this is the gamma for, let us say, or position of the parcel, and this is the gamma for the mg. Okay, angular momentum. Okay, something like the equivalent. I was trying to make it equivalent to understand properly. Okay, so in case of conditional symmetric instability, the stability depends upon the position of the parcel with respect to the isolines of dry static energy and the angular momentum surfaces. Okay, that is the conditional symmetric instability. And as a result of the convective symmetric instability, we mentioned yesterday that we get slant-wise convection as illustrated. Is this slide visible to you all? Are you able to see this slide? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this slide is showing that, especially the slide, the diagram on the right hand side is showing that the clouds which form in a symmetric instability situation are not straight vertical, but they are slanted, slant-wise convection. And this is slanted because of the Earth's rotation, because of the angular momentum surfaces and the effective gravity have to, resultant of the effective gravity and the angular momentum surfaces, right? So that was the slant-wise convection. And yesterday we also discussed, I think, not in detail, but we were talking about barotropic instability. We already discussed about that yesterday briefly, not in detail. And also we discussed about the baroclinic instability, again, only qualitatively, okay, not really the details of the equations involved in barotropic instability and the baroclinic instability. We just talked about the general features of these two types of instability. Okay. Then there is another one instability called the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. Okay, Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. Have you heard about the Kelvin-Helmholtz waves earlier before? Have you heard about that? Yes or no? Kelvin-Helmholtz waves. Everybody is silent. Say yes or no. Kelvin-Helmholtz waves. Am I audible and visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it seems that nobody has heard about the Kelvin-Helmholtz waves, right? That's what it seems. So, okay. In the atmosphere, again, there can be instability because of the wind shear. Okay. Because of the wind shear, there can be instability in the atmosphere. And in such kind of instability, the flow pattern is like a wavy in structure, like a wave. Okay, and it is also visible in the sky in the form of wave structured cloud. The clouds in the sky look like waves. When there is a Kelvin-Helmholtz instability present in this atmosphere, the clouds associated with that look like the waves. Okay, and this kind of instability occur because of the presence of the wind shear. Okay, now wind shear, as you know, is the change of wind speed with distance, either horizontally or vertically. Okay, that is the wind shear. You already know that. Wind shear can also occur because of change in the wind direction, right? For example, in these diagrams, we illustrate various types of wind shears that can occur. For example, in the first figure here, you see that there is a piped flow, piped flow between two bounded surfaces. These are the boundary, upper boundary, lower boundary, and there is a flow within these two boundaries like a piped flow. Okay, so there is a maximum current in the center, and as you go toward the boundary, the speed of the current decreases. So this kind of variation of the speed causes the wind shear, and this can cause the instability. Okay, another way type of wind shear can be in this form, right? Like in the boundary layer, for example, in the Earth's boundary layer, the wind immediately in contact or directly in contact with the Earth's surface is the slowest because of the friction. But as you go up, the wind speed can increase, right? As you can see illustrated in this diagram, the wind speed is increasing with height. Okay, so this kind of flow pattern can also cause wind shear, okay, which in turn can cause the instability. And third type is this one, like there is a flow in a wake, okay. There is a minima at the center, and as you go away from the center in both the direction, the wind speed is increasing. It's like a wake-like situation, right? So here again there is a wind shear. That means the variation of the wind speed in both the direction, right? Wind shear. So this is another example of the shear, a horizontal shear in the wind, which can cause the instability. Then yet another example is this one. Okay, this is jet-like pattern, right? Like you have jet streams in the atmosphere. There is a maximum wind speed at the center, and as you go away from the center, the wind speed decreases. Jet-like phenomena. Okay, jet stream. So this also can cause the wind shear, and in turn can cause the instability. And yet you have got the fifth category of wind shear, which is like a free convection boundary layer. Okay, free convective boundary layer. Okay, so here again you have got maximum, and as you go away, then it decreases. So these different types of flow pattern can cause the wind shear, and which in turn can cause the instability and create wavy structure in the atmosphere. So Kelvin-Helmholtz instability is an instability at the interface between two parallel streams with different velocities and densities. Okay, it is also called the shear instability because it is formed because of the wind shear. Okay, shear, and what is shear? Shear is the change of the wind speed in space. Okay, shear. So examples of the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability are illustrated in these two diagrams. Okay, the upper diagram illustrates the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability generated in a laboratory. Okay, generated inside a laboratory of the fluid dynamics laboratory or fluid mechanics laboratory. One can generate. We have got, you might have heard about the wind tunnels. People who work on the fluid dynamics, they have the wind tunnels, very big wind tunnels, in which they can control or regulate the wind speed as well as the wind direction. Okay, and they can generate the wind shear in the laboratory, and in turn they can generate the instability. Okay, so this is an example of instability in the laboratory, and this one, the lower diagram, is an example of the instability in the real atmosphere. In the real atmosphere, see the cloud pattern like this one. Is this cloud pattern visible to you clearly? These clouds? Yes or no? Are you able to
Yes,
see
sir.
these clouds?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, wave-like clouds, right? This is looking like waves, okay? And these wave-like clouds are because of the presence of the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. Kelvin-Helmholtz instability, that means there is a presence of the wind shear in the atmosphere somewhere. And generally, over the mountains, they are quite frequent. They're very frequent over the mountain. So such kind of wavy structure in the cloud is called the Kelvin-Helmholtz clouds. Kelvin-Helmholtz clouds because of the existence of the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability in the atmosphere. Okay, so now this is the another, I think, fourth or fifth types of instability. If you start counting from the beginning, the first one is the, say, let us say, thermal instability. Okay, then we have got the conditional instability. Okay, second one, then we have got conditional instability of the second kind. Third one, then we have got the inertial instability, right? Fourth one, then we have got symmetric instability, that is the fifth one. Then I've got barotropic instability, that is sixth one. Then I've got baroclinic instability, that is the seventh one. Okay, and now I've got the eighth one, that is the Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. Okay, now all these instability are physical phenomena, occur because of the physical processes, physical or combination of the physical and dynamical processes, right? All these instability. There is yet another kind of instability which is not due to the physical processes, and that is called the computational instability. Computational instability. Okay. So, as the name suggests, this occurs purely because of the computational problem. When you are solving a lot of differential equations in the model, when you are trying to solve or determine the future state of the atmosphere, then you have to consider the equations governing the atmosphere, which are momentum equations, the thermodynamic equations, okay, the moisture continuity equation, and so on. Okay, and all those equations you need to solve in time as well as in space, right? So since the solutions have to be numerical because the equations are non-linear, they are not linear equations, so you have to apply some numerical techniques. And when we apply the numerical techniques, then certain conditions have to be obeyed. And if those conditions are not obeyed, then it results in instability or fluctuation or oscillation of your solution of the equations. Okay, and that is called the computational instability. The instability which arises because of the computational problem, not because of the physical problem like convection or turbulence, etc. But it occurs purely because of the computational problem. Okay, so the numerical approximations to differential equations may exhibit unstable behavior. This type of behavior is referred to as the computational instability. Okay, clear? Yes or no? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, very good. So let's consider the linear one-dimensional advection equation just for an example, because the momentum equation also has the advection terms, right? You know advection, right? Advection can be both horizontal as well as the vertical advection. Okay, so as an illustration, let's consider a linear one-dimensional advection equation. Okay, given by this differential equation in its form del q by del t plus C del Q by del X is equal to 0. This is a pure Advection equation. Okay. Rate of change of Q plus C is the speed, and del Q by del X is the horizontal gradient of Q. Okay. This is called the Advection equation, one-dimensional linear Advection equation. Okay. So when we try to solve this equation, then we have to discretize it. Discretization means you have to expand it in the space. Okay. Here in this equation, C represents the speed. Okay. Q, which is a function of x, and O, because it's a one-dimensional support, is a known initial condition. Okay. Q at x and time is equal to 0, starting time, is the initial condition. Now this equation can be approximated to second order accuracy. In x, there is space and time by the centered difference equation. You expand this equation or write this equation in the form of central difference numerical technique or discretization, then it can be represented like this. Q at a grid point or at a location M and time S, time step S plus 1 minus Q at the same location at the time S minus 1, previous time step, is equal to minus sigma, which accommodates this factor, the C factor, times Qm plus 1 at S. And we are trying to just discretize this term, del Q by del X, numerically. Del Q by del X is discretized numerically. Then this C, you can say C is transformed to sigma. Okay. And Qm plus 1 indicates the value of Q at time step M plus 1, that is future time step. And in the space, it is S minus Q minus 1, that is the previous time step. Okay, where M is indicating time step here, and S is the location in the horizontal. Okay, so this is the discretized form of this one-dimensional Advection equation. Okay, now here is an example of the grid representation. Okay, of the variable. For example, in this diagram, these dots, can you see the dots here? Is this dots visible to you? All these dots.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
These dots are basically indicating the grid points in the horizontal. When we are trying to discretize the differential equation numerically, then we need to discretize like this, have different grid points, okay, over that zone or the space. So these are the grid points, and in the x-axis, it is indicating the index of the grid point, like M. M is indicating index of the grid point. The suffix M here in this equation, as well as in this equation, as well as all these points, the suffix M indicates the points in space, grid points in space, okay? And the y-axis here, denoted by S, indicates the time step, okay? So here, S plus 1 is the next time step, S minus 1 is the previous time step at the location M, wherever is the M, which is ranging from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, up to the number of grid points which are there in that entire domain, okay? So QMS plus 1 minus QMS minus 1 is equal to minus sigma times QM plus 1. The next time step, the next grid point, M plus 1, because M is a grid point here. Okay, is this visible to you? Are you able to read this later? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is the index of the grid point in the space. So QM plus 1, that means the next grid point at the same time step S minus Q at M minus 1, that means the previous grid point. Suppose M is equal to 3, then M minus 1 will be 2, and M plus 1 will be 4 here, right? So this is the discretization in the grid space of this term dq by dx, del q by del x. Okay. So in this equation, this sigma basically indicates c times delta t divided by delta x. Sigma is indicating c times or product of c times delta t by delta x. Okay, and c delta t by delta x, and this is called the Courant number. Okay, name of the scientist, Courant number. Okay, remember this is a very important number, Courant number. In order that this solution of this equation, this advection equation, is stable, the Courant number must fulfill a criteria. Okay, Courant number. You remember this Courant number because this will come up later on also, not only in this semester but also in the next semester. Courant number, and this is given by C delta T divided by delta x, the Courant number. This form of time differentiating is referred to as the leapfrog method. The central time difference is also known as the leapfrog scheme. Leapfrog scheme, because in this scheme we are trying to jump by 1 point. Suppose if you are here at this point, then you have to jump to m plus 1, that is the next point. Again, you have to jump to back point m minus 1 at the time step s, which could be anything. Okay. So this is the representation of the advection equation in terms of the finite difference method, finite difference technique. Okay. So sigma here is defined as c times delta t divided by delta x. Okay. And this is a Courant number. Third time I think I've repeated Courant number. And this is called the central scheme, central differential scheme, because when we say s plus 1 and s minus 1, that means you're just jumping one step ahead and one space backward, one forward step and one backward step. So this is s plus 1 minus s minus 1. That is the value of q at the point m, whatever you define m, this is here, m. At this point of m, central difference is written as this formula, q m s plus 1, q m s minus 1. So this is called the central difference, both in time and in the space. M represents the space here, and s represents the time here in this graph. This is the time, y-axis, represented by s. Okay, and in the x-axis you have got the horizontal grid point. Okay, so this is the leapfrog method because you are jumping by one step. Leapfrog method, and is the tendency at time step s is given by difference in the value computed for time s plus 1 here minus time s minus 1. Okay. Then, in order that the solution of the second equation, the last equation, remain stable, it must satisfy this criteria. Sigma, which is the C, okay, Courant-Frederick number, is equal to C delta T time divided by delta X, and this must be less than or equal to 1. In order to have a stable solutions numerically of the partial differential equations governing the atmosphere, you have to satisfy this criteria. C delta T divided by delta X must be less than or equal to 1. Then only that criteria will be fulfilled and your solution will be stable. Otherwise, your solution will not be stable. Okay, and you will be getting junk results. So this is referred to as Courant, Frederick, and Levy condition. Remember, Courant, Frederick, and Levy condition in now as an acronym you can write as CFL condition. Okay, CFL condition, which is very important criteria which must be satisfied for solving numerically any hydrodynamic equations. Okay, although CFL condition, this is condition 3. Okay, guarantees stability of the central difference approximation. This is guaranteeing the stability of the central difference equation to the one-dimensional advection equation. In general, the CFL criteria is only a necessary and not sufficient condition for computational instability. Okay. Well, computational instability. So here both the things are there. Like one is the numerical technique, numerical method, and the other is the physical technique or physical processes. And no matter, even if everything is stable physically, but it can become unstable numerically because of the unsatisfaction of the Courant fabric and level condition. So the stability which occurs because of this Courant fabric Lewis condition is called the computational instability. Computational instability. Okay. So this is yet another kind of instability. Is eighth or ninth? Have you counted? Do you remember? So okay. Now the existence of computational instability is one of the prime motivations for using filtered equations. Because what happens is that when we are trying to integrate the differential equations, then we are constrained by this condition, CFL condition. Okay. And because of the CFL condition, you cannot have large time steps because of the CFL conditions, CFL condition, which state that equal to C delta t divided by delta x must be less than or equal to 1. This is the CFL condition. Okay, that's what we've been discussing just now. But delta t is a time step of the numerical integration, time integration, and delta x is the horizontal resolution. Like you have seen in the previous diagram, horizontal resolution of the grid points. Like suppose if this is a domain, then this is the delta x. Okay, and if you've got a time axis, this is, let's say, x. Earlier it was denoted by m, and this is, let's say, time is the time axis. So you've got delta t as the time step of integration, and as you can see from this condition, the C delta t by delta x condition. Okay. C delta t. So as you can see from this condition, you cannot have a longer time step which depends on the delta x, right? And therefore, when you are integrating the differential equations like this one, del q by del t, okay, plus c delta q divided by delta x is equal to 0, then in that case, your delta t, the time step of integration, will be dependent on the delta x. And so when the delta x decreases, then you have a higher resolution model. You say high resolution model because we're trying to resolve small scale phenomena like turbulence, for example, or the clouds, for example. And there are small scale phenomena, right? In terms of the meteorological language, small scale phenomena. Okay. Cloud scale or the turbulent scale. So to resolve such kind of phenomena, we have to have a very high resolution model in which delta x can be very small. Okay, delta x can be about 1 kilometer sometimes, or it can be sometimes less than 1 kilometer or a few hundred meters. Okay, few hundred meters. If you are trying to solve the turbulent motion, right? So in such situations, the magnitude of the delta t is in terms of second, okay, is in terms of the seconds. So you have to integrate the model equations seconds by seconds time step. Okay, second by second time step. That's how you have to integrate the model. So the CFL condition has to be satisfied. Okay, so but the point is, even if the CFL condition, which I already discussed, right? In order that the solution of 2 remains stable, it must satisfy the CFL condition, that is C delta T by delta X must be less than or equal to 1, as called the Courant-Fadrique and Levy condition. Now, although CFL condition guarantees the stability of the centered difference approximation, which we have just seen earlier, to the one-dimensional advection equation, in general, CFL criteria is only a necessary and not sufficient condition for the computational instability. That means there are other things, other factors also which must be fulfilled in order to have a stable solution of the numerical model. Okay, the existence of the computational instability is one of the prime motivations for using the filtered equation, right? Because when we are trying to solve or resolve the clouds in the model, the time step becomes too small, okay, in terms of the seconds. Otherwise, the solutions will not be computationally stable. Therefore, what we do is we try to use the filtered models. Okay, filtered models. What is filtered models? We can discuss more in detail maybe in the next class. Okay, but essentially, the solutions of the equations are not stable. The solution of the equation is not stable because of the presence of many unwanted waves. And in this kind of equation, there is a solution of the atmospheric waves of interest like Rossby waves, but it also contains the solution of the gravity waves and the sound waves and many other waves. And for the large scale motion, for example, we don't require the sound waves and the gravity waves. For a small scale motion, of course, gravity waves are important, not for the large scale motion. So if we do not fulfill the CFL criteria, then first of all, our solution will be unstable. And even if we fulfill the criteria, then also there are many other factors which need to be fulfilled. For example, unwanted waves like the gravity waves or the sound waves. They will mask the solution of the equations, and the waves which are important to us like Rossby waves, they will not be visible, right? And so we try to filter out these unwanted waves. We try to filter out unwanted waves. Okay, filter out unwanted waves. And when we filter out the waves from those equations, then those models or those equations are called filtered equations or filtered models. Okay. And we'll study in detail later on in this subject slightly details or some details about the filtered models like barotropic model, that is a filtered model, okay, or baroclinic model, okay, that is a filtered model, or equivalent barotropic model, not purely barotropic but equivalent barotropic model, okay, or sometimes we have quasi-geostropic model, quasi-geostropic model. Okay, so these models are called the filtered models. Okay, in these models, you filter out the unwanted waves like sound waves and sometimes also the gravity waves, which unnecessarily dilute the solution or produce absurd solutions of the equations which are unwanted. Okay, so these models will be taught later on, in this subject, in this syllabus. Okay, but this for now, it is sufficient to know what are the filtered models, right? So, as we said, if we don't filter out the models, then the solution becomes unstable, and that kind of instability which results because of the computational problem is called the computational instability. Okay, called the computational instability. Right? In the quasi-geostrophic system, you know what is quasi-geostrophic? Yesterday we also, we talked about that. No gravity or sound waves occur. Okay, they are filtered in the quasi-geostrophic system. Thus, the speed c here in this equation is just the maximum wind speed. It's not related to the sound, the speed of the sound. Okay, typically c is less than 100 meter per second. If it is not sound waves or gravity waves, then typically it is less than 100 meter per second. So that for a grid interval of 200 kilometer, a time increment of about 30 minutes is permissible. Okay, 30 meter is a very large time step when we are integrating numerically. But generally, such large time step is not permissible because of the grid resolution. When our grid resolution used to be quite coarse, like 100 kilometer or more than 100 kilometer at the time, core 30 minutes was okay. But nowadays, most of the models are about 10 kilometer in resolution, or sometimes even less than that, 1 kilometer in resolution. So we cannot have such a large time step, 30 minutes. Otherwise, our solution will be unstable. Okay, because of the problem of the computational stability, right? So that's it for today. Okay, and we have completed with this the different types of instability that occur in the atmosphere because of the physical processes as well as because of the numerical processes. Is that okay to all of you? I see that only 8 people are here. Still 4 people are missing. Are you able to?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, great. So if you have any question, just let me know. Is there any question to anybody? Yes or no? Everybody is silent and it's already 1:33. So we
No,
stop.
sir.
Okay, fine. So good. So I'll stop the class now. I'll stop the sharing the screen. Stop sharing. And I'll mail you the video of the yesterday's lecture and today's lecture also, and also the PowerPoint. Okay, because now we have completed one topic of the syllabus, that is the atmospheric instability. Now in the next lecture, I think tomorrow we have a lecture, right? Tomorrow we have a class, Saturday,
Yes, sir.
isn't it? So,
Yes, sir.
tomorrow's class will talk about a new topic, that is the hierarchy of the models, atmospheric models, right? Hierarchy of atmospheric models. So for today, we are going to stop. I'm going to stop recording.